And a very good morning to everybody out there. This is Vincent Miletti with Miletti Law, the strongest name in law. My name is Vinny Miletti. I am the owner, founder, partner of the law office of Vincent Miletti. Like I said, the strongest name in law, your authoritative force in employment law, in life, in intellectual property, whether it be the courtroom or the weight room. We don't play games. So this video today is actually very important for a lot of you, because I get this question a lot. And just by way of a little bit of a background, you know, I'm looking to purchase a piece of investment property. And, you know, you always want to whenever you have a piece of investment property, you always want to set it up in the best way possible, in the best legal structure possible. You know, you don't want to just, let's say, just put it in your name or whatever the case is. Maybe you want to give it its own separate entity, because you literally want to treat it as a business. You're not treating it as a residential home. You're not going to be there. You know, it's going to be purely a source of income. So you want to set it up in the most appropriate way possible that you can reap the most benefit and have the least amount of risk. So, to begin, the title of today's short little brief video is called The Miletti Law Quick Guide on what is the difference between a C-Corp and an LLC. The Vinny Miletti Quick Guide, the Miletti Law Quick Guide to what is the difference between a C-Corp and an LLC. So you hear everybody says, well, I want to open up an LLC. I want to open up an LLC. Okay, why do you want to open up an LLC? What is it about an LLC that you want to do? Nobody has a response to those questions. The best response I ever had that I thought really captured it was one guy I spoke with. It was like 6 a.m. I was actually speaking to him between sets at the gym. I had him on the phone, and he said, well, you know, that's just what we do. Everybody says, oh, everybody opened up LLCs, so that's just what we did. We opened up LLCs. Not really knowing why the reason for that particular vehicle that they wanted to open up their company. So I'm hoping that this little short video will explain to you what the differences are between them in a very practical sense, so you can understand when you are creating your corporate structure for whatever that purpose is. You know, if it's the C-Corp, which is a regular corporation, that might be in your best interest, or if it's the LLC, the Limited Liability Corporation, that might be in your best interest. So without further ado, let's go right into it real quickly, right? So let's just formulate the issue first. The issue is, what would be the best corporate structure to facilitate whatever kind of transaction you have. And the issue is just simply whether it is you want to have a C-Corp, which is your standard corporation, or an LLC, which is Limited Liability Corporation. So I'm going to put this in 6 particular ways. I'm going to put this in 6 categories, which be helpful, which I think are the most important categories for you to consider. The 6 categories I've chosen were limited liability, tax considerations, fees, that's important, ownership structure and how you operate, its duration and existence, and then issuance of stock and ownership issues. So those are going to be the 6 categories off the bat that we're going to discuss. So the first category is limited liability. It's a corporation. Sorry, alarm came up. It's a corporation, so there's limited liability in all of them. It doesn't really matter. Realistically, you have about 5 or 6 different kinds of structures out there. The one where you'll have liability attached to you will likely be a partnership. So we're not doing a partnership. We always want some kind of corporation. We always want limited liability. Just so you know, what do we mean by limited liability? We mean that the individual, you, me, Vinny Miletti, cannot be held liable for what happens with the corporation, Vinny Miletti Corp. Okay, so if Vinny opens up Vinny Miletti Corp, Vinny Miletti personally is not liable. Unless I do something evil and naughty, nefarious, then they pierce the corporate veil and then I get stuck. But generally speaking, what you do through the corporation, through the business, you have limited liability. You are not liable for the faults of the company. Okay, so first aspect is limited liability. Both of them, both a C-Corp and an LLC, a C-Corp and a Limited Liability Corp, both of them share that same quality. There is nothing better about an LLC versus a corporation when it comes to this. So for those of you that respond back and say, well, you know, it's called a Limited Liability Corp and the other one's a corporation, they are both limited liability. Don't worry about that. Second, tax issues. Now, both of them have very similar tax structures on the federal level. You both have that first layer federal tax, right? So income comes into the corporation or limited liability corp. Money comes in, it sits in this pool. You pay taxes on that, right? But the corporation pays taxes on that. Then, you take it yourself or you pay yourself, whatever, that's a different ballgame. But As far as corporate taxes, remember, you get taxed twice. It's New York. It's not Florida. You get taxed here. You get taxed state and federal. As far as federal taxes are concerned, it's going to be looked at practically the same way. In New York, you'll pay a little bit more for the state taxes for the LLC. So just keep that in mind. There kind of like other implications with filing an LLC in New York, other tax implications with it, and they vary depending on what you're doing. So you're paying a little bit more in taxes in the LLC in New York than you are on the regular corporation. Again, it's not that much big of a deal. It's still manageable. So they're similar in limited liability, similar in tax structure. Now, in terms of formation fees, this is a little more expensive to do the LLC than the corporation. Corporation fees to open up a corp, you're probably looking like under $200. And that's like with the best, that's like with the certificate of existence, with the certified copy. Limited liability corp, you're probably looking $250, probably. Then again, for the best stuff, for the certification, for certificate of existence, for all kinds of stuff. So not that big of a deal. Limited liability, an LLC costs a little bit more than a C-Corp, so not that big of a deal. All right, so now the fourth category I think is big. I think the fourth category is important. Formation and operating agreements and structure. So the key difference between an LLC and a corporation is the freedom you have to allocate responsibility, to allocate the corporate structure, rules, etc. That is the biggest difference, is the amount of control you have over corporate formation and documentation. You have far, far, far more control for complex agreements with an LLC than you have for a corporation. Corporations, everything is ruled and governed by statute. You're allowed X amount of shares. Those shares never change unless you have some kind of amendment. And it's very rigid, very firm, because corporations are corporations, and they just have years of existence and years of litigation and years of law and years of, compliance and just years of just straightforward material. LLCs are relatively newer. They just really got hot in the 80s and 90s, I want to say, right? I think they really just got hot in the 90s. And, the whole purpose of the LLC is to enable the owner, enable the managing members to be able to have this more complex relationship, be able to really control the documentation and the operation internally amongst its members. So keep that in mind. If you're looking to have multiple investors, if you're looking to have more complicated arrangements, you want to use an LLC than a corporation, simply because you are freer in an LLC to do what you want to do with the documentation than you are with the corporation. So from my perspective, that's the most important that's the most key part from my perspective, because you want to be able to have these kind of complex relationships where you govern them from cradle to grave, right? So cradle to grave, which brings us to our next point, duration and existence. Both of them are what's known as perpetual in terms of existence, meaning that you build a corporation and it lasts forever. You can, in the formation of the LLC, you can set a dead date, basically, like a life cycle. So that's really the big difference. You could do it also as well in a corporation, but it's just from terms of filing, like right off the bat, it's much easier through the LLC. If you want to do it for just say some kind of per point in time, I don't know, like you want this corporation to have a 10-year lifespan because it has a very limited task, right? So let's say that. So but both of them are in duration, could be perpetual. It's fine. You have a little more control in the LLC, but not that big of a deal. Okay, so now we have the sixth part. These are now meetings and stock issuance and day-to-day operational control. It is easier in an LLC, period. Hands down. I've had situations in the past where we've had people that had corporations, they wanted to bring on family members, and they couldn't bring on family members because they couldn't necessarily break down like the stock issuance at the very beginning of the corporation. So when they first opened up their corporation, they said, like most Americans, like most New Yorkers do, they just use the term language, the standard language, which is 200 shares. They all use 200 shares, right? And that is the default. When you open up a C-Corp, that is the default selection online, 200 shares. Nobody cares, so they just say yes, right? So now what happened with this particular person was, down the road, they wanted to bring in their family members and they wanted to split shares of the company. They've already split that 200 shares. It was something like 66, 66, 67, right? They've already split in the past with their existing members, and now they wanted to take on two more. They couldn't they couldn't give out any more without filing some kind of amendment to be able to like reallocate the shares, to be able to appreciate more shares. And then that caused the issue with their accounting, whatever the case is. So it wound up becoming a pain in the butt for them, which required them filing a couple amendments and filing a couple more things. So with the LLC, they wouldn't have had that issue. The LLC, even when you file from the very beginning, it's not even a question. Like it doesn't even ask you on the documentation the amount of shares when you file. It has like 4 questions. That's not one of them. You have more control in the LLC. Like you're able to have more documentation that gives you more control. So it's just a much easier process if you want to take on multiple shareholders, if you want to get more money and get more money into the vehicle. It just becomes a much easier situation. So, the LLC wins out in that one, right? So, okay, so just a quick overview again, what we discussed, right? We discussed 6 points. We discussed limited liability, tax considerations, formation fees. We discussed ownership structure and operational agreements. We discussed duration and existence. And then we discuss, getting income and stock issuance and stuff like that, right? Money, fundraising. That was the stock issuance with fundraising. So those are the 6 categories that we discussed. Just generally speaking, in terms of strengths and weaknesses, the strengths of the LLC are going to be control over your business, and also for more complicated business transactions, and also fundraising. Because you have much more control in the LLC in terms of personal control, how you do your business, you can allocate funds in any way you want. You can collect money how you like. You can have operational agreements and how you like. It's just a matter of what you could discuss. It's just a matter of what you can negotiate with your partners in the situation of the LLC. So that's a huge strength. The weakness of the LLC is many times it's more complicated than what people actually need. They don't, for instance, like publishing and stuff like that are not necessary. If you are a small business owner and you just want if you are a small business owner and you have you want to have very limited investment into it, and you don't see this being such a complicated situation, you just want to be able to have you want to be able to make some money, you want to be able to run the business, you want to be able to have a piece of property, you want the benefits of a corp, but you don't want the complexity of the LLC. C-Corp is the way to go for you. Speaking in the inverse, the big strengths with the C-Corp is literally the years of history and litigation behind it. You have certainty with a C-Corp. You know what you can do. You know what you can't do. The law is there. The law is black and white. The law is the law when it comes to C-Corps. It has a very long history of stare decisis. Has a very long history of previous case law. It's predictable, okay? And also, it has built-in restraints that you could lean on if, let's say, down the road you find yourself in an issue with an investor or someone coming in. It actually provides kind of like as an out for you, where you could say, hey, I can't do this because of the statute, or because of this is what the the business corp law says. So that's a good thing also for you. It's kind of like it has like a built-in out. So that's a strength of the C-Corp. So really, look, at the end of the day, right? The big conclusion here is what's better for you, a C-Corp or an LLC? And at the end of the day, look, the conclusion is going to be, if you need flexibility, if you want to take on a more dynamic business structure where you have more control over things, then you're going to want to do an LLC. An LLC offers that ability for you, and an LLC is fantastic for that. If it is a smaller type of business where you don't need as much investment money, you don't need as much complexity, you are really more in control of your business directly, then C-Corp is fine. You are encouraged to do a C-Corp. For me, you are encouraged to do a C-Corp and not do an LLC. There's no reason to have the complexity. There's no reason to have to do all the corporate formation documents and the operating agreements. And there's no reason to do such. It's just going to cost you more money. You're going to ask me to do more work for you, and I'm going to charge you more. And it becomes unnecessary. While LegalZoom sucks, I would never recommend LegalZoom. While that sucks, at the end of the day, you want to save some money and you want to get what you need, right? So, You know, I wouldn't go super complex if I don't have to, and I would do a C-Corp if I was going to have a smaller, more kind of like fine-tuned business where I was working directly. So I hope that this video was helpful. I hope this video explained the difference between them. I get this question so many times, so many times. It is notorious for New Yorkers, this question. It is notorious for Brooklyn, New Yorkers, because in Brooklyn, we all want to be fancy business people and say big fancy terms like, I want to get a LLC, but I don't have an LLC, and I don't need an LLC. So, Vinny Miletti here at Miletti Law, making it easy, making life easy, breaking it down for you, making sure you all stay usually motivated, the strongest name in law. And you can find us at www.milettilaw.com. That's www.milettilaw.com. Miletti Law. Again, I am Vincent Miletti, the founder, owner, and the Big Mac Daddy here at Miletti Law. I wish you all a beautiful day. I hope this was helpful. And always stay usually motivated. Yours in Lord loves and lifts. Let's get it on.